406-7400. Call now.
Express 106.5 FM.
The #1 FM talk radio station in the Inland Empire.
KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind. Express 106.5 FM.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to KCAA Radio. Welcome to the International Wealth Builders Association, presented by the Real Men of Real Estate. I am your host, Harrison Silverstein, the mentor and lead trainer of the Note Assistance Program. Here on my show, we're going to teach you how we make money and go to heaven, creating those win-win opportunities and investing in mortgage notes. First position mortgage notes, to be exact. Throughout this program, you're going to learn the who, what, where, when, and why of this business. Our goal for each of these episodes is to demonstrate through example or through introduction a way to grow your wealth passively while doing good for the world. Our weapon of choice is the first position mortgage note. So if you're a disgruntled landlord or just looking to fast track that 9 to 5, this is the show for you. To those of you that are new to the topic or have never heard of a note, you're probably wondering, what are these notes we speak of? Are they post-it notes? No. As a matter of fact, most of you have been a part of a note without even knowing it. If you've ever made a monthly installment payment on a car, cell phone, appliance, anything like that, you've been involved in a note yourself, just on the other side of the table. When you go into a bank and you sign for a mortgage, right? You get that whole stack of papers. One of those papers in that packet is called a promissory note, and that's what our entire industry is named after. It's simply a promise to pay. Once a note investor buys a note, you become the bank. You step into the lender's shoes, and you're the one collecting the mortgage payment, and the real estate is your collateral. Today, we're going to have Jasmine joining us through Zoom. And I can see her right now. Jasmine, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, good to have you through the magic of the internet. But today's episode is, we've been, for the past couple of sessions, we've been singing the praises of notes and how they're so good to us and what we do. But now I think, we wanted to throw maybe a little curveball in that. And one thing that I, pride myself on and, is integrity, right? Coming from the military, we like that integrity piece. And we want to keep it real, right? So today we're going to talk about how note investing may not be the right fit for you, because it's not a one size fits all kind of deal, right, Jasmine?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. The risks are very important, and today we have decided we're going to at least tell you about 5 specific risks, and we'll come back and revisit this often, but it's very important. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, this topic, it's important to me because, even in myself, when I'm looking around, when people are telling me how great something can be or whatnot, in the back of your head, if you're a sane person that's been on this earth for more than 2 seconds, that you're thinking, okay, what's the catch? Where's the downside? There's always a downside,
Right.
So that's some of the stuff that we want to highlight here, because
Yeah.
I think one thing that attracted me to to working with you and everything is we just keep it real, right?
Yeah, that's one of the principles here at the company. And so really, I think we should, before we get into the actual 5 things that we want to talk about today, is why this was important to us, right? Like I said, it is actually one of the principles here that we practice at the company, the Note Assistance Program, and also in our lives. And so letting you know really what you're in store for before you join as much as possible. That's really what we do in so many different areas. And that's also what our education piece is surrounded by, really real life, relevant, and current, right? Current education pieces. How many times have you showed up to a seminar, webinar, what have you, and they're teaching you something that worked even 4 years ago, right? Pre-pandemic. it's not really appropriate, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean times are changing always, especially with the pandemic, a lot of things, one of the first things people were asking about is, hey, what about those moratoriums? How is that affecting you guys in the note business? And it did, here and there, but we were still able to carry on doing our business, which I think was a great strong point for us.
Indeed.
But yeah, it's incredibly important, and not only that, when we're introducing people to the program, to note investing, a lot of times we're, hey, listen to our Naked Notes podcast, right? And I can see in the background of your video, right? The Naked Note podcast is a great way to get involved and kind of get your bearings on this before jumping in.
That is one of the tools that we use to get the message out there, right? When you think about it, one of the most abstract things when learning anything new is trying to figure out what the new challenges are going to be. So it's not so much that you haven't had challenges and you don't know how to get over them, you're not used to them. You may have seen them in other areas of your life, but now you have to know what these challenges look like with this current segment, right? And you want to know what they look like in the future and what they can look like. So when you're in this specific industry, they're going to look a lot different, believe it or not, than when you actually own a house. And that's one of the hardest things for people to wrap their hands around when they have the notes is that I do not own a home. So again, one of the whys that we have outside of that is our principle is that as far as getting you from point A to point B mentally, the most effective way we could have found is to make sure that we share our stories and tell you about the risk. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even when people do join, I mean, they have a whole sit-down conversation with you, and it's just laying out, hey, this is what it is, right? Let's make sure this is, what you're getting into.
We have an extensive list of things that we wish, and it stemmed from that. I sat down and said, what are some of the things I wish someone would have told me before I got into note investing, right?
Right.
And so everyone has been very appreciative of that list, and that's one of the things that is different about our approach. Is like, what are the things that we need to be aware of? Let's talk about those first. Not that that's going to turn me away, right? We talked about asymmetrical risk last time on your radio show. So not that it's going to turn me away, but I need to be educated on what to expect so I can, basically get myself the appropriate resources that help me get through that. So that's what is most important as far as me always saying that this is a relationship-based business, right? You have to figure out how you can preemptively attack some of the things that are going to be coming your way.
Right. Right. And really, it's just a whole, I think if we were to sum it up into a couple words, managing expectations, right?
Yeah.
We know that, okay, this isn't a get rich quick scheme, right? We're not going to be overnight millionaires. But
funny you say that.
Yeah.
I always tell people during our 2-hour call, this is not an MLM either, right? So it's not one of those things we have to go home and pitch grandma and auntie and mom and make sure everybody gives you money for it. This is something that you can actually create a self-sustaining business. And what's more importantly, what I hope you get from these episodes that Harrison puts out is that notes are all around you. So something that you may not have heard of last week, just like, yellow, I remember before yellow cars were a thing, right? I never saw a yellow car, then all of a sudden you see yellow cars everywhere. So one of those, it's not that it wasn't a thing, I just never saw it. So notes are all around you. Once you learn about the opportunity, then you can start taking advantage of it through many different levels and many different stages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm excited to dive into these topics with you. And we will start breaking into that right after our commercial break right here. If you like what you guys are hearing about note investing and that resonates with you, you can get involved by giving us a call at 855-541-6683. That's 855-541-6683. Or email invest@noteassistanceprogram.com. That's invest@noteassistanceprogram.com for more on this whole note investing thing. We'll be right back.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller.
Recording in progress.
At 951-973-0123, DefinaMillerMortgage.com.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the International Wealth Builders, presented by the Real Men of Real Estate. I'm your host, Harrison Silverstein. We are continuing our discussion on why note investing may not be the best fit for you. We have joining us via Zoom, we have Jasmine Willowall, the president of the Note Assistance Program here, and we'll start getting into these topics, the 5 major reasons why note investing may not be for you. So I think, Jasmine, first of all, the most evident is that notes, it's non-traditional real estate. We are not actually purchasing the physical property, right? Would you like to elaborate a little bit on how that differentiates from most, traditional real estate?
Yeah. And I don't know that I would necessarily describe that as a risk or anything. I would just describe that as just, like you said, a differentiation. So you definitely want to make sure that you understand that you're not getting the keys when you wire the money to anything versus like when you sit down, do an escrow, and then all of a sudden, literally, they hand you keys and you get to go walk into a home. When you get a note, you definitely do not have the right to walk into that home or, and go in and start making, any type of plans, never mind actual repairs, because someone should be, especially if it's performing, living in the house, have taken possession of it. And so everything from that normally, all the rights normally reserved for that borrower are also reserved for them with that note that you purchased, right? So really, what I think is important is we talk about what are some of the basic goals that we want to get across to you when we talk about the 5 risks, because there are plenty of risks, right? We go through a list of at least 20 to 25 when you join the program. So we're going to go through as many as we can here. But yes, one of the first thing is, and if you would like to describe that as a risk, is really that education piece, is understanding where and what you have, because you can get in trouble, right? And when I say trouble, everything from the real estate board, your local real estate board, all the way down to the attorney general. You can get in trouble if you do not properly know the difference between real estate you own and a loan that you've just purchased. So part of the goals that I want to talk about is the education, right? So educating you on the notes. So that's what Harrison really wanted to talk about, is just the basic difference of what notes were, right? We want to talk about what the opportunity notes provide you. So we want to educate you on the opportunity throughout all these episodes that he puts down here today. What's the actual opportunity that notes provide? We want to demonstrate that notes are all around you, as we discussed. Then we want to be clear on the risks. So we've always talked about what the risks are. So that's really what we're going to focus on today, putting forth also an honest, relevant, and real experience with our listeners so that you guys can actually kind of get a feel for this without even getting a ride on it, right? So yeah, let's talk about some of those 5 things, because we really strive to be the #1 choice for note investing conversation, right? So what are the 5 things that we have here, Harrison? I think you said we want to talk about taxes, right? That's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Yeah. The taxes, especially the property taxes, that is one of the areas in which we can completely lose, right?
Yeah.
That we can get absolutely wiped out if there are delinquent taxes, and depending on what kind of state you're in, whether it's a tax deed state or a tax lien state, eventually, if that tax goes delinquent for too long, you could lose the right to the property. And first lien or not, that could completely supersede you and wipe you out.
What's genius about this, a lot of you guys out there who are involved in tax lien investing, you are familiar with these terms, right? You're familiar with first lien, you're familiar with property taxes, and you're also familiar with whether or not you have the right to, right, impede on that first position. So what we want to let you know is that taxes are something that one of the top 3 things that we tell you is that you must know the tax situation, because as he mentioned, tax lien or tax deed, which again, something you'd be familiar with if you're in any other side of real estate investing. These are terms that you're listening to, but the question is, how does that affect you as a first position holder, right? If you own the tax deed, okay, that's a different conversation. You understand where your rights lie. What if you are not even the borrower? Different situation, sometimes similar results. But if you own the loan, what are the risks that you have if you don't pay the taxes? So first and foremost, checking those taxes out is important, because if they are scheduled to go to sale 2 days before you wire the money, right? Maybe you don't want to wire the money, especially if it's like he said, tax deed or tax lien. If you find out it's a tax lien state, then you want to take into account that as soon as it's done, it's probably beneficial for you to pay that right away. Otherwise, the longer you take to pay it, the more interest it's going to accrue. Wouldn't you have found that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it could definitely put a dent in your profits if you're unaware, or if you let that run for too long, right, even if you have a lot of time until the tax sale comes around.
Right. So even if you have 2 years, it's a delicate balance. You can take a $700 tax bill and now it's a $1,400 tax bill, right?
Right.
So these are numbers that, as he said, can really affect your bottom line, especially when a lot of the numbers that we're working with here are a lot smaller than, again, the big banks that a lot of us get our notes from. These banks are dealing on the millions upon millions, hundred upon millions scale, right? So when we're talking about, a note that you may have a $60,000 profit margin that you're trying to squeak something out, that's where that magic happens. But the magic is that creativity. So again, some of you guys start to manipulate and get more sophisticated with your tax strategies around note investing. It's just you want to watch that ticking time clock, because as he said, your expenses can increase in that fashion, right? If you're in a tax deed, then forget about it, right? If you're about to wire a note and the next day taxes are going to sale, unless you're ready to go through that exhaustive effort to go and get that done, and get the attorney done prior, invest some time into it before you wire everything, then you might as well just move on to the next deal. Okay, it's very, very, very slim circumstances that you can unravel a tax lead sale. And again, that's going to cost you more money than you would think, because you're going to have to contest that in court, right? And it's all going to end up with you, first of all, paying back definitely the taxes. So definitely tax deed states will, again, you can lose everything, and there's no one you could talk to about that, especially as an investor.
Yeah. Especially when we're talking about those kinds of, thankfully in today's day and age, a lot of the tax issues or tax, they're easy to look up, right? A lot of these counties have online databases. You can look up what the current taxes owed are. You can get the information so you can call them. So there is a way to avoid it. It's just we have to be aware of it. And whenever I meet someone that is a tax lien investor, or they specifically go to those tax deed sales, a lot of times we have a lot of parallels in our due diligence and in our styles of work as well. So if you're someone that does that, we're used to being dealt, a deck of cards, I like to say, and that's how these are the ones that are available. Let's go check out these properties. So if you're a tax lien investor, you might be actually a little bit closer to our style of work than you actually think.
Yeah, I would say that definitely. I'm definitely considering note investing if you don't already have that in your up your sleeve. So before we move on to the next one, the taxes are going to be important for obvious reasons, right? We've always said, and I've always heard, that there are 2 things we all have to do, right? And so that still applies when you buy a note. You still have to, as we say, die and pay taxes, right? So paying those taxes are going to be important because the cities and states, let's talk about why they need them. They need them to run their local fire departments. They need them to run their local, clerk offices and things like that. So at some point or another, the bill is due and they need it to be paid. So when we're talking about the taxes, this is something that you want to look at before you fund and close and be well aware of it. So again, where in this transaction is the tax that's most important? And that's in the beginning prior to funding. So that's the other thing I think is very important when you talk about reviewing your taxes. As a caveat to that, when we say taxes, we are talking about property taxes because you may find that there may be other tax liens on there, right? So if you have some IRS or personal tax liens, those are going to follow the borrower and not the home. Okay, so always check, excuse me, the advice with attorneys before you move forward, especially if you pull title and find a lot of liens. But that's what we can tell you, that as the bank, we're really concerned about property tax liens, and that was an important distinction as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that same vein, anything having to do with the nuisance liens and city code violations, sometimes those get wrapped up. If they go delinquent, those get wrapped up into taxes, and then therefore can become a tax lien as well if that goes delinquent as well. So a lot of things to cover.
Yeah, and that could really complex, and we'll actually break that down into
come out of nowhere.
As we do expand on this. The other thing that we want to talk about, especially before we go to segment 3, or the next segment is going to be, let's talk about that title, right? Title is one of the top 3 things. So when I talk about top 3 things, we actually have a waterfall of points and things that you do to complete your due diligence here. But a lot of people like to take shortcuts, which we do not recommend here. But if you do, these are the top 3 things that we're going to start off with that we suggest you do not forfeit. You do not go around and take shortcuts. So we talked about taxes. Let's talk about title. How important is that, Harrison?
Title is everything. I mean, to the very first part of that title is, hey, does the person I'm talking to actually own this note? Right? Like making sure that first and foremost.
Sell it to me.
Yeah, right. Does this guy even have the authority to sell me this note? Because it happens. We have to talk about it. It happens. And then not only that, but now we're checking on the chain. Now in that title, we need to make sure that we have the full chain, that it's all recorded. Because getting it into our name, if let's say, and sometimes this does happen where we'll get a note and it's not recorded. Maybe there's a link missing somewhere, and then you have to go back to the seller, right, to get whatever documentation we're missing.
Which speaks to, again, that relationship piece. When we talk about, you would want to make sure that if you don't have that relationship, that the person you're buying the note from or someone within your direct community has a relationship with who you're buying this piece of paper with, especially until you can get all that done. Because many times, especially, let's talk about things that are changing, right? When we come out of this pandemic, some new and relevant things, if we even backtrack to taxes, you may find that there's some grace periods that you're having even in tax deed states because they are so backlogged from the moratorium. They are putting things back. And so sale dates may be pushed back. So you may find, and I have found recently, that because of the current state, and we're all just kind of hopefully squeaking out, although we've seen numbers kind of creep up. But as far as the extreme panic part of the pandemic, as we have come out of that, we have vaccines and things that can, help us take it calmer. I have seen that there are little things that have changed. And so when it comes to taxes, that's one of them. When it comes to title, you also want to make sure, because things are changing hands very quickly, right?
Right.
In many different ways. So the current economy is making sure that you have a lot more people trying a lot of different industries. So when you find someone out there offering you a note, it's like, did you just start? Where'd you find this note on the internet, on the street? So making sure they have a relationship, because many times things are getting kicked back when you're trying to get recorded, right?
Right. Absolutely. No, I mean, especially with how sometimes, if these, while you're sleeping, your mortgages, all these notes are getting traded overnight, right? Yeah. And sometimes with how fast that's moving in places like California, right here in California, they'll kick something back, or they'll raise the red flag with the title company, or whatever happens. I went through this process pretty recently myself, where I said, hey, let's can you get signatures on this affidavit? We need to make sure that all of this is happening the right way, that these transfers were happening properly and not, going around anyone's back or anything like that. So definitely title is very important. We check on that, get the collateral going and everything. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, please.
I was going to say that last piece was that, and so important that you highlighted, was that Yes, for many different reasons, especially if you're doing a quick sale and it seems to have exchanged quickly, there may be additional affidavits that may be requested, especially again if you're going to do another sale to a retail investor. And then also just simple things are now being required that may not be required. And this happens just regularly in business. But let's take, for example, consideration clauses, right? So those of you who are familiar with quick claim deeds and things like that, some of them in some states are now requiring consideration clauses. And that is something that may not have been requested, 3-4 years ago. So now if you have an old document that you need to record, a title, piece of a deed, and it doesn't have that, then it's getting kicked back and you may need to go back, right, to that person, which, by the way, let's talk about the risk involved. So if you don't have that, then what are the risks and how do you solve that? That's what we're here to do, okay? And one of the beautiful things I want you to remember is that all these things that we are giving you solutions to, right? So when we go back to the taxes, solutions are pay them early, be aware of them, right?
Right.
Know if it's tax lien or tax deed state, okay? And also know that don't give up because tax sales may have been pushed back, right? So those are ways to avoid if you find yourself in a sticky situation. And when we talk about the title, we want to give you solutions to that as well. So the answer to that is a quiet title, right?
Absolutely.
So if you have some problems with the title, then your worst case and last resort is going to be a quiet title. And depending upon where that break in the chain is, that's where you're going to have to focus on and go back and send out letters and wait 4 days, whatever's required by law, for them to get back to you so they can actually quiet the title. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, we can probably bring in an expert to talk to you about quiet title in all its glory. But with that said, that's one of the ways that you really can quiet down, right? And fix title issues if you don't have the relationship. But that's going to be, and many times, pretty expensive, or it can be rarely expensive, but it really depends on how far and long you're chained and the discrepancies are. But it can really cost a lot more time and money.
Right. And not only and time, that's one thing I want to highlight as well, because if you're a person that, maybe a little bit more of the immediate gratification type, not having those relationships there doesn't necessarily mean you may be dead in the water, but these things will take time to fix. And if you're impatient, that could really, maybe not work for you, right? If you were expecting something a lot sooner on a very strict timeline, that could be something that delays it quite a bit.
Yeah, what I can tell you is the note game is very vast. If you're looking for short-term debt instruments, they are out there, right? But mortgages may not be necessarily the best vehicle for you. But there are a lot of there are SS bonds out there, the government, and a lot of government bonds right now because interest rates are going up. Newsflash, so are their rates. So a lot of them are getting close to 10%. So there's some really healthy opportunities for you guys out there in the note space as far as paper is concerned, if you're looking for different time differentials. But yeah, definitely time is going to be one we're going to have to touch base on. Let's talk about
before we head into the next topic, let's get to a commercial break, and then we'll pick it up from there. So guys, if this is resonating with you, and maybe you said, hey, you know what, these issues don't matter to me, I still want to get into no investing, you can give us a call at 855-541-6683. That's 855-541-6683, or email invest@noteassistanceprogram.com. That's invest@noteassistanceprogram.com. We'll be right back.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the International Wealth Builders, presented by the Real Men of Real Estate. I'm your host, Harrison Silverstein, and we're continuing our discussion of 5 reasons why note investing may not be the right fit for you. So to recap, we went over taxes, we went over title, and you know the risks that come with that. Next up, value. Let's talk about value for a sec here, Jasmine.
Yeah, the value of what, right? You're like the value of the note, the value of, so many things. But really what we're looking at is the value of the underlying asset. So one of the great things about the skills that you learn in this industry is that you start understanding how to start valuating the underlying assets for the paper that you're buying, because this is something that can transfer to many, many different things, right? The note is just a note that is attached to some sort of object that you want to secure it to. That can be a car, right? It could be, so many things. So think about anything you have a loan on, and then this is what we're going to talk about is how do we value the underlying asset to know if it's worth what we're securing it on, right?
Exactly. And a lot of that, again, we talk about it a lot, but it's all about starting ourselves on the right foot with getting the note for the right price, right? But as you continue doing notes, and we invest all across the United States, and there are a lot of people out there that are, I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, hey, California, let me know anything in California. And, people want to stick to the areas that they're familiar with because they can,
but they know the value.
Right. They know the value a lot better. And if you take them to somewhere like Michigan or Wisconsin, they're just like, I don't know what values are here or what's the normal here, because that's one thing that I think is a big learning curve for some of our students and new note investors alike, is looking at an asset that's outside of their zone of comfort maybe, and being like, oh, hey, they're seeing like a mobile home in, I don't know, Georgia, and they don't really know that, they're saying that, and they're like, oh, ooh, I don't know about that. There's a little bit of that stigma.
That's a perfect example if you ask me. I just have to interrupt, excuse me, but it's a perfect example.
Please. Yeah.
Mobile homes in areas like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia are going to have different values and even stronger ones than you may find out in areas like California. You think yourself, how can that be? California land values are so much more expensive. Well, here's the thing, right? When you talk about value, it's about the value to the consumer that you have. And when you go out to places like North Carolina, as long as you have some land, which normally comes with mobile homes out there, right? If you have an acre of land or more, you've got yourself a desirable piece of property, okay? These guys are more concerned about their outdoor lifestyles, and that's what dictates their market and what they're purchasing, right? Homes or attachments that have an acre or more of land attached to it. And so when you come out to California, that's not necessarily the most important thing. And it's actually more unrealistic, right? You're not gonna get an acre of home with your mobile home unless you're moving out to, Lord only knows, the desert. And much more importantly, it's not gonna be in a park where, again, that's where some of us, when we're doing it, maybe we have a conversation on mobile home notes, but that's what some of us use to add value to what we're buying. So the underlying value is very important to your entire transaction.
Absolutely. And, the biggest part about that is just putting yourselves into the state that you're going to be working in and finding out what the norm is over there. What do people want out there? Because people all across the United States have different values for what they want, right? Like that 1 acre number, that's a big thing in certain areas of the United States. They don't care if it's a manufactured home or mobile home. They're like, hey, as long as I have that plot of land, that's where my value comes in. So inserting yourself and adding that to your research, if you're investing across the United States, is really the biggest point of this. So so note investing might make you, go outside your zone of comfort a little bit, but if you can hack it and you can kind of, call the right people, know who to call, get immersed in that area, see what they want. Hey.
You made me laugh. It was funny because I just always start thinking about things, and the more I think about what we are discussing here, the more it makes sense, right? The more it makes sense that they're less concerned about the actual home that's attached to the land and the land, because out there, it's easy to find a John Deere, let's say, a store, than you're going to find one in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
It's easier to find the land and to be given the land, and people that are more in the construction business. And again, if you're in New York City, it's not everyone in New York City that walk around and knows how to fix skyscrapers and do things like that. Versus out there, you may have, a cousin, an uncle, relative, or yourself be in the industry or have built experience, be hand in building things. So you have to think about the lifestyles, right? And where people live and what's going to be desirable to them. And that's the beautiful things about notes and how we can take advantage of notes that are Arkansas, Wisconsin, California. It's really us having the ability to take our living values and ask ourselves what are different in those states and identifying them when we're looking at things.
Exactly. So moving to our next point, I think we covered the values pretty well. Hey, going outside your comfort zone can be a big thing for people.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, just as with everything that you're buying, you want to know what is securing the asset. And so what I will lastly say about that is that what is securing our asset here is a home, right, of some stature. So whether it's a mobile home, a town home, or a single family residence, sometimes commercial, that is what we are trying to get the value of in this particular point of the conversation. But yeah, where are we moving next?
Next up, let's talk a little bit about bankruptcy. That's a big scary word that most of the time people, chill goes down people's spines when that comes up. So what can you tell us about bankruptcy and notes?
Well, here's the best thing is I'm actually going to be speaking on bankruptcy for the next couple months. I usually like to try to stick to a topic and kind of get to spreading the word about it. And bankruptcy is one of those things that, again, come across as a big risk. But if you really have the right mindset and tools at your disposal, it actually can be, believe it or not, a benefit. And so a lot of people love bankruptcy notes. Bankruptcy notes are really huge opportunities for people. And again, mostly because people aren't educated about them. So a lot of people find out that their note or someone filed bankruptcy and they freak out and they want to get rid of it and they think the value has gone to zero. A lot of people think when someone files bankruptcy, they wipe out my note. I've actually heard people think of this. So the first step is getting educated on bankruptcy and everything, as we talk about, and why we have this radio show. Is education is so much more important in this piece of the real estate and this side of the real estate than any other. Now, obviously, you need to be educated when you're flipping and all that good stuff, but a lot of that is real visually education. The doors are open or is it closed? Here, you have to start thinking more about, hey, what are the real values of what just happened? And am I really in danger or am I just starting to hyperventilate? So first of all, when someone files bankruptcy, it's very important to know that does not wipe out your mortgage note or your equity in the note that you just purchased.
Right. And I think that's the difference between secured debt and unsecured debt, right? Is that's going along those lines, because there is a certain type that will get wiped out. But when we're dealing with the mortgage note, right, with a house as collateral, we're not necessarily worried about that.
Right, and that's different. And so what I want to tell you first thing is that bankruptcies are typically followed by people who want to do what? Again, thinking outside the box. They want to save their home. So first genius part is that when someone files bankruptcy, what you probably know is that they want the bankruptcy to acknowledge the outstanding debt on the home so that they can do what's called an automatic stay. So when someone files bankruptcy, an automatic stay is filed, and that automatically stops all creditors from being able to progress and move forward with whatever their action is to collect. All collection acts are stopped. And many times that's temporarily, depending upon what bankruptcy 713 that you file, you know.
Right. What chapter?
Yeah, depending on what chapter that you file. So with that said, you know, and obviously without getting into a whole bankruptcy discussion here, which is a whole, you know, definitely
It could be a whole episode in itself.
If you call in, you want that to happen, I'm sure Harrison will indulge you with that. But again, just lightly treading on bankruptcy, you're not going to lose your interest. And most importantly, because a lot of people, I don't even know what the actual number is, but the majority of the bankruptcies are filed so someone can make sure that they retain their home. So as far as the first thing that happens is that you may be restricted from doing more collecting actions, from contacting and doing that with the borrower, but it does not wipe out everything. There are steps now that you hire an attorney to help walk you through, and specifically a bankruptcy attorney, who that person is allowed to talk to the courts on your behalf.
Right, right. And, you know, now that we're talking about attorneys, litigation, that's a big part of notes, especially when we start talking about the non-performing side, right?
Yeah, you know, and definitely I wanted to end with that, to end with a big bang. So depending on what type of time we have, but yeah, the litigation is something that's very, very huge. And I wanted to bring it up right in the beginning, the spam, right? Because that's what you are getting involved in, right? So when you think about it, even backtracking to bankruptcy, which we talked about, could be a risk for you. The risk involved the timeline, it will extend your time, and then you're going to have to employ a different attorney. Not all attorneys are bankruptcy attorneys. First newsflash. So if your current attorney does not have a bankruptcy department and they don't currently practice bankruptcy, then you're going to have to employ another attorney, right? So your expenses do increase and your timelines do increase. But again, we just told you that, as Harrison always mentioned, everything's in the buy. You should be able to, you know, take care of this and know that this is a risk, but something that's not going to stop you from profiting from your position there. But that litigation piece is probably the second most, if not neck to neck, with as far as the most scary and intense thing about note investing. So that's why I wanted to end with that with you guys, right?
Right. And we can definitely, I didn't mean to burst the bubble there, but we can definitely come back to that topic and have a fuller discussion about it. We'll cut to a commercial break right now, and then we'll get straight into the litigation. So guys, if you like what you're hearing, once again, you can give us a call at 855-541-6683. That's 855-541-6683. Or email us at invest@noteassistanceprogram.com. That's invest@noteassistanceprogram.com. We'll be right back.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field. The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Real Men of Real Estate with Steve Matley, construction manager and real estate developer, business owner and educator.
Did you know that right now there's 22,000 units deficit?
Tunde Ogunwale, real estate development professional, Naval Academy grad, and veteran with a deep understanding of the public sector process.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Brian Fox, real estate expert and investor, dedicated to helping hundreds of clients make money in real estate every year.
There's so much housing going in.
The builders are begging for more land.
Future company can come in, lease up space to employ those people who are living in the homes.
We have to put the housing in place.
We either have to have houses.
They want to make sure that there's a strong employment.
Logistics centers, things like information hubs. We are a shipping economy now. There's economies all over the country where their prices are doubling and tripling.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the International Wealth Builders, presented by the Real Men of Real Estate. I am your host, Harrison Silverstein. On the line, we have Jasmine Willawa here with us. We've been talking about five topics that might not fit for you if you're looking to get into no investing. I mean, just to do a little recap once again for everybody that's just joining us, we went over taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Property taxes is a way that no investors can lose. If we're not privy to that, if we don't know what we're doing, we can get completely wiped out, first lien or not. Number two, title, right?
Yeah.
The title is everything, whether we're buying something or talking to someone that is actually allowed to sell us and what they supposedly own. And then secondly, going through all of that chain to make sure that we can record it into our own name. That can all be something that at least can throw us for a loop in terms of time and money if we don't have that squared away.
Yes, sir.
Number three, the value, right? I think value is the biggest part, is one of my favorite talking points, because we have to insert ourselves into the communities around the United States where we're looking to invest, not necessarily in our own comfort zone, but outside of that, and figure out, hey, do people like mobile homes here? Is this the norm? Do they get, is this a reasonable valuation, or am I kind of talking myself maybe out of a good deal because I'm not used to something like this?
And that happens often, right? I mean, how easy is that to do in this business? Because you are naturally going to get the heebie-jeebies, if you will, when you're looking at, imagine the first mobile home that we purchased in North Carolina. We didn't know what we were looking at. We didn't know what type of gold mine we were sitting on until we started talking to the local people, and they told us, and it's a true story. Oh, you know how close this is to the water park, this, that, and the other. And so you have to find out what locally is going on before you, shy away from an asset.
Yeah, exactly. And number four, we went over bankruptcies, which could be a whole topic in depth in itself, but, that can stop any collection or whatnot. And at least for a time, there's going to be resolution. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But again, it's talking about that time piece, right? Like, this is just another process that we'll have to go through and work out, which kind of drives us to our final point, which is litigation, where I want to say, it's like 80 to 90% of what we're going to end up doing in notes, one way or the other, is deal with the litigation, or at least with some kind of attorney going through legal, etc.
Right. So first thing is, if attorneys are not your friends now, they will be by the time you're done with your career, right? So, and after all, here's what I can tell you: they're not really that bad people. They're great. Some of my best friends now are attorneys based on what we do here. So, talk about that litigation piece. You are definitely going to have to get a stomach for that. So, if you are the type of person that gets, knotted up and stressed out if you see some legal documents coming in, or if attorney reaches out to you, and trust me, that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's an actual term for a phobia of attorneys, right? But with that said,
we'll have to look that up. I'm pretty sure there's a word out there somewhere for that.
Gotta be, right? But if you're the type of person that lets that stuff stress you out, then this again may not be for you, because litigation is really a part of what we do. What I can tell you is that it's very rare that you're getting into any type of litigation, but the point of having creditors' attorneys is one of the bane of our existence here. It's so important that we have to talk about it, is that having the proper attorney to represent you when the time comes, it could really make a difference between an open and shut case or something that drags out and you end up having to get multiple attorneys right?
Right.
In order to get this fixed. So one, identifying the right attorney to help you get through it. Well, let's actually backtrack. I would say identifying the situation would be
Yeah.
most important before, right? So is it a BK you need one for? Because you have a BK attorney. Is it
Right.
you need one to review the contract because you're going to be looking for a foreclosure sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a totally different attorney. So there are different types of attorneys you may need in these circumstances. You may just need an attorney to file and get things recorded for you, right?
Right. And it could vary quite widely, but being able to identify what situation you're in, right, and then getting the right attorney for that process can really, like you said, mean the difference between, oh, this is normal, we handle this every day, boom, 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 sign these papers, we'll submit it, you're sitting back and relaxing, right? Or, you know, if you have one of the things that, you know, I personally have gone through, you know, thinking, okay, this should be simple, get this kind of attorney, and suddenly the deal, we were going one direction, right? And then suddenly another option pops up and we're like, okay, we have to pivot now, and let's talk about moving this direction. And he's like, oh, well, I don't handle that. I don't know how to do that.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, now I got to get the right attorney on the phone again. And
a lot of times they'll tell you up front, right? A
Right.
great case to wrap up with an example is that we recently had someone, I believe in the state of Vermont, who, not Vermont, maybe it's Ohio, but nonetheless, we have an asset where it was paying for a while and then they stopped paying. So now we're going to have to try to seek some sort of, you know, legal action to find out how we're going to recover payments. Long story short, we took it to one attorney. He says, you're not going to really need me. All you're going to need is a simple eviction.
Right.
But guess what? I don't do evictions. But do you remember what state this was in?
Vermont, right?
Was it Vermont? Okay.
Yeah.
So with that said, now we had to stop and go find an eviction attorney in that state locally. So with, you know, a little bit more time because they wanted to check if there's any conflict of interest between us and the borrower. And so all that good stuff had to happen. And now we're moving forward. But attorneys, if you're doing the right things, your attorneys will specialize in what they do.
Right. And that's really, it goes such a long way. You know, a lot of times people are like, man, that sounds like a lot of work, you know, to go through this. And I'm like, honestly, it's a matter of me going on the internet or searching, you know, looking at our connections with NAP, our resources that we've worked with many times. But at the end of the day, it's about talking to them, telling them what the situation is. So part of that is knowing what situation you're in, first of all, so you can explain it. Right.
And how much that'll save you money because the attorneys are only going to act upon what you tell them to.
Right.
You could actually have 6 things that are wrong with you, but if you go to them, it's not like the doctor. If you go to the doctor, you know,
they tell you what's wrong with
find out that you have an earache, they're going to fix your earache. No.
Yeah.
Right? You go to an attorney, you can have 6 things wrong with you, but they're like, well, what do you want us to work on today? You
Absolutely.
Tell them that. If you want to work on all 6, then you tell them and they're going to bill you for it. Or you say, this is what, you know, we need to work on today. So just know that you have to be aware of your ailment. That's key.
And I think that's the perfect analogy that I will probably hang on to and use forever, is just attorneys don't treat them like doctors. Don't come to them and say, what's wrong with me? Because there's going to be a million things they could probably say, right, in different ways. But if you know what situation you're trying to remedy and you're like, okay, this is the problem, I need to fix this, then we have a focused effort and we can just pursue that, and anything along the way that needs to get fixed will get fixed, right? So that's the most important thing. Again, this topic, you know, maybe the next time we can pick another 5.
Because there are risks. Don't let anyone tell you there are no risk and no investing.
Right. There are definitely risks, but it's just being knowledgeable enough to identify it. So we're running short on time here, but thank you so much, Jasmine. I think we can probably do a part 2 to this. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That is all the time we have for you today. You've been listening to the International Wealth Builders, presented by the Real Men of Real Estate. I am your host, Harrison Silverstein. It has been my pleasure having you all listen to our show today. Thank you, Jasmine, once again, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Take care.
Happy Father's Day to you guys.
Happy Father's Day, yes.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3.